The USS Liberty flew straight into the heart of the Voidborn fleet, and Captain Jake Morrison smiled as his ship did something no other vessel in the galaxy could do. It began to think. "Danny," Morrison called to his chief engineer, "activate the adaptive systems." "Yes, sir," Walsh replied, his fingers dancing across his console. "Bringing all systems online now." The Liberty's hull began to shimmer as thousands of microscopic sensors came to life. The ship's advanced computers started analyzing everything around them: energy patterns, movement speeds, communication signals, even the way the enemy ships reflected light. "Sir," Ryan Brooks called from Tactical, "the Voidborn are targeting us. 12 ships moving to intercept." "Let them come," Morrison said calmly. "Lisa, begin evasive pattern alpha." Commander Lisa Parker's hands moved across her controls, and the Liberty began to dance. The ship did not move like other vessels. It did not follow predictable flight paths or standard maneuvers. Instead, it moved like water, flowing around obstacles, changing direction in ways that seemed impossible. The Liberty twisted and spun, dove and climbed, following patterns that made no sense to anyone watching. The Voidborn ships fired their dark weapons, the same energy bursts that had disabled hundreds of Coalition vessels. The deadly projectiles reached toward the Liberty like grasping fingers. Every shot missed. "How are we doing that?" Brooks asked in amazement. Parker smiled. "The computer is predicting their firing patterns. Every shot they take gives us more data about how they think. We are staying one step ahead of their targeting systems." The Liberty flew deeper into the enemy formation. Around them, massive Voidborn ships moved like sleeping giants, their dark hulls absorbing light from the distant stars. The small human vessel seemed tiny among them, like a minnow swimming among whales. "Sir," Walsh called out, "I am detecting their communication network. It is unlike anything we have seen before." "Show me," Morrison ordered. The main screen changed to display a web of energy that connected every enemy ship. The pattern was beautiful and terrifying, like the nervous system of some vast creature. Information flowed along the connections, faster than light, allowing perfect coordination between thousands of vessels. "That is how they move as one," Parker realized. "They are not separate ships. They are all parts of one mind." Morrison studied the display. "Danny, can we access their network?" Walsh's eyes lit up with excitement. "Sir, I think we can do better than that." The Liberty continued its impossible dance through the enemy fleet. More Voidborn ships moved to intercept, but the human vessel stayed ahead of every attack. The advanced computers learned from each near miss, becoming better at predicting enemy movements with every passing second. "Sir," Brooks reported, "the Coalition fleet is watching us. Admiral Zixtar is demanding to know how we are surviving in there." "Tell him we are doing what humans do best," Morrison replied. "We are adapting faster than the enemy can learn. Liberty's weapons finally came online, but they were not like the energy beams and missiles the Coalition forces had been using. Instead, the ship fired something completely different. "Deploying cyber warfare packages," Brooks announced. Invisible bursts of information shot out from the Liberty toward the nearest Voidborn ships. These were not physical weapons, but something far more dangerous. They were programs designed to infiltrate and confuse computer systems. The effect was immediate. 3 enemy vessels suddenly stopped moving in coordination with their fleet. They began firing at empty space, turning in random directions, moving like they were lost. "It worked," Walsh shouted. "We are disrupting their network connections." Morrison watched as the confused Voidborn ships tried to rejoin their fleet's coordination. Other enemy vessels moved to help them, but this created gaps in their perfect formation. "Lisa, take us through that gap," Morrison ordered. The Liberty shot forward like an arrow, passing between 2 massive enemy ships before they could react. The human vessel was now in the very center of the Voidborn formation, surrounded by thousands of dark ships. "Sir, Adams called from communications. "The entire coalition fleet is watching us. They cannot believe what they are seeing." Through the bridge windows, Morrison could see the enemy ships all around them. Some were so close he could see details on their strange living hulls. Any normal ship would have been destroyed instantly. In this position, the Liberty was not a normal ship. "Danny, begin Phase 2, Morrison ordered. Walsh grinned and activated systems that had never been used in battle before. The Liberty's hull began to change shape, growing new antenna arrays and sensor clusters. Hidden weapons ports opened, revealing guns that looked nothing like traditional ship weapons. "Sir," Brooks said in amazement, "the ship is rebuilding itself." "Not rebuilding," Morrison corrected. "Evolving." The Liberty fired again, but this time the weapons were different. Streams of pure information shot out toward the enemy network, carrying programs designed to do something unprecedented. They were going to hack the Voidborn hive mind. "Sir," Walsh reported, "we are accessing their command protocols. The network is more complex than we thought, but our systems are finding ways through their defenses." Around them, more enemy ships began to act strangely. Some started firing at their own fleet. Others began moving in circles. The perfect coordination that had made the Voidborn so deadly was beginning to break down. "How are you doing this?" Brooks asked. Morrison stood up and walked to the main view screen. Around them, the greatest enemy fleet in galactic history was, starting to fall apart, confused and leaderless. "Ryan," Morrison said quietly, "what is the one thing every computer network fears most?" Brooks thought for a moment. "A virus?" "Exactly. And what are humans better at than any other species in the galaxy?" Parker answered from her station. "Creating chaos," Morrison smiled. "We are not trying to destroy their network. We are not trying to take it over. We are introducing something their perfect system was never designed to handle, which is human creativity, random thoughts, unpredictable ideas, jokes, dreams, and completely illogical concepts. We are teaching their hive mind to think like humans." The effect was spreading through the enemy fleet like wildfire. Ships that had moved in perfect harmony for thousands of years were suddenly acting independently. Some were trying to communicate with the Liberty. Others were questioning their own orders. A few had even stopped fighting entirely and were just floating in space, apparently thinking about things they had never considered before. "Sir," Adams reported, "Admiral Zixtar is asking what we want the coalition fleet to do." Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Voidborn fleet was in complete chaos, their perfect coordination shattered by the introduction of human unpredictability into their network. "Tell the Admiral," Morrison said, "that now would be an excellent time to attack." The Voidborn swarm arrived 3 hours early. Captain Jake Morrison was reviewing battle plans in his ready room when the alarms started screaming across Rally Point 7. He rushed to the bridge as emergency signals flooded the communication channels. "Report," Morrison ordered as he dropped into his command chair. "Sir," Ryan Brooks called from his tactical station, "the enemy fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They are not where our scouts said they would be." On the main screen, space itself seemed to darken. The Voidborn ships were unlike anything Morrison had ever seen. They looked like living shadows, dark forms that bent light around them. Some were small and quick like deadly fish. Others were massive, larger than entire space stations, moving with the slow grace of sleeping giants. "How many?" Morrison asked. Brooks checked his readings twice before answering. "Sir, I count over 60,000 ships. The intelligence reports were wrong." Commander Lisa Parker moved to her station. "The coalition fleet is scrambling to formation. Admiral Zixtar is calling all ships to battle positions." Morrison watched as the alien fleets tried to organize themselves. The Centauri heavy cruisers were turning slowly, their massive hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Altarian battle groups were forming attack formations, their red ships moving like angry hornets. Smaller species were clustering together for protection. "Sir," Communications Officer Beth Adams reported. "Admiral Zixtar is ordering us to retreat to the rear of the formation." "Tell the Admiral we appreciate his concern," Morrison replied calmly. The Voidborn fleet moved forward like a dark tide. As they got closer, Morrison could see how they moved together. It was not like separate ships following orders. It was like fingers on a hand, or cells in a body. Every ship knew exactly what every other ship was doing. "Sir," Brooks said, his voice tight with worry, "they are moving in perfect coordination. I have never seen anything like it." The first shots of the battle came from the Altarian fleet. General Kethvor had positioned his 600 ships at the front of the coalition formation, and they opened fire with everything they had. Bright red energy beams reached across space like burning spears. The Voidborn response was immediate and terrible. The dark ships flowed around the enemy fire like water around rocks. What should have been devastating hits simply missed as the alien vessels moved in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. Then the Voidborn returned fire. Their weapons were unlike anything in the Coalition database. Instead of energy beams or missiles, they fired what looked like pieces of living darkness. When these dark projectiles hit Coalition ships, the vessels simply stopped working. Lights went out, engines died, and the ships began to drift helplessly in space. "They are not destroying the ships," Parker observed. "They are disabling them." Morrison watched as 3 Altarian cruisers went dark in the first exchange. The ships were not exploding or burning. They were just floating dead in space, their crews trapped inside. "Sir," Brooks reported, "General Kethvor is calling for the second wave to advance." More Coalition ships moved forward. Centauri heavy. Cruisers opened fire with their massive cannons. Rigel Federation destroyers launched swarms of missiles. For a few moments, it looked like the attack might work. Then the Voidborn adapted. Morrison watched in amazement as the enemy ships began to change. The small, quick vessels started moving faster, dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. The larger ships shifted their dark hulls, absorbing energy weapons that had worked perfectly in the first exchange. "They are learning," Walsh said from his engineering station. "Every time we hit them, they adapt to that weapon." More Coalition ships went dark. The perfect formations began to break apart as captains tried to avoid the spreading zones of disabled vessels. What had started as an organized attack was becoming chaos. "Sir," Adams called out urgently, "Admiral Zixtar is ordering all ships to retreat and regroup." Morrison looked at the tactical display. In just 20 minutes of fighting, the Coalition had lost over 200 ships. The Voidborn had not lost a single vessel. "Sir," Parker said quietly, "the Admiral is specifically ordering the Liberty to retreat to a safe distance." Morrison stood up. Around him, his crew waited for orders. Through the bridge windows, he could see the battle raging in the distance. Bright flashes of weapons fire lit up the darkness, but with each flash, fewer Coalition ships remained active. "Commander." "Parker," Morrison said calmly, "please send a message to Admiral Zixtar." "Yes, sir, what should it say?" Morrison smiled. "Tell him that the Liberty respectfully declines his order to retreat." "Sir?" Parker looked confused. "Tell him that we came here to fight, and that is exactly what we intend to do." Brooks turned from his station. "Captain, there are 60,000 enemy ships out there. They have destroyed or disabled half our fleet in 20 minutes. "I know." "Ryan, I can count." "Then why are we not retreating?" Morrison walked to the main view screen and looked out at the swirling battle. The Voidborn ships moved like a single living creature, flowing around enemy attacks, adapting to every weapon, learning from every exchange. It was beautiful in its own terrifying way. "Because," Morrison said quietly, "they have never fought humans before." He turned back to his crew. "Danny, are our special systems ready?" Chief Engineer Walsh grinned. "Sir, they have been ready since we left Earth." "Ryan, do you have a full analysis of the enemy movement patterns?" Brooks nodded. "Yes, sir. The computer has been tracking their coordination signals." "Lisa, Are you ready to show these aliens how humans really fight? Parker smiled. Sir, I have been ready for days. Morrison returned to his command chair. Then let's give them something they have never seen before. Something they cannot adapt to because they do not understand it. What is that, sir? Adams asked. Human unpredictability. The Liberty began to move. Not toward the rear of the formation where Admiral Zixtar had ordered them to go, not into the defensive positions where the other small ships were hiding. The human ship turned directly toward the heart of the Voidborn fleet. Sir, Brooks called out, the Admiral is demanding to know what we are doing. Morrison watched as the dark enemy ships grew larger on the screen. Soon, the Liberty would be in range of their terrible weapons. Soon, they would learn what happened when someone tried to disable a ship crewed by humans. Tell the Admiral, Morrison said, that Earth is about to show the galaxy what one ship can do when that ship thinks like a human. The Liberty flew straight into the swirling darkness of the Voidborn fleet. Behind them, the Coalition forces watched in horror as the small human ship seemed to fly directly to its destruction. They were about to learn that humans did not think like other species. They were about to discover that when humans said they only needed one ship, they meant exactly that. The real battle was about to begin. The USS Liberty dropped out of hyperspace at Rally Point 7, and Captain Jake Morrison felt his breath catch in his throat. He had expected a large gathering, but nothing had prepared him for this sight. Thousands of ships filled the space around the massive Coalition station. Centauri heavy cruisers hung like silver daggers in the darkness, each one 3 times the size of the Liberty. Altarian battle fleets moved in perfect formations, their red hulls gleaming under the station's lights. Rigel Federation ships clustered, together like metal clouds bristling with weapons. Sir, Commander Lisa Parker said quietly, I count over 3,000 ships, and they are all staring at us, added Tactical Officer Ryan Brooks, checking his sensors. Morrison looked at the main screen. Every alien ship in the area had turned to face the Liberty. He could almost feel their eyes watching the small human vessel as it moved slowly toward the station. Incoming transmission from the station, reported Communications Officer Beth Adams. Put it through. The screen flickered, and Admiral Zixtar appeared. The Centauri leader looked tired and worried, but when he saw Morrison, his expression changed to one of confusion. Captain Morrison of Earth, welcome to Rally Point 7. I must ask, where is the rest of your fleet? Morrison stood up straight. Admiral, the Liberty is Earth's contribution to this battle. Zixtar blinked his large eyes several times. I do not understand. We are facing the greatest threat in galactic history. Every species has sent hundreds of ships. You send one? Yes, sir. We send one. The Admiral's blue skin grew darker with anger. Captain, this is not a training exercise. This is war. The Voidborn have destroyed 12 star systems. They have killed billions, and Earth sends one small ship. Before Morrison could answer, another voice cut into the transmission. Admiral, this is General Kethvor of the Altarian Third Fleet. I demand to know why we are wasting time with this human joke. The screen split to show both aliens. General Kethvor was tall and red, with 4 arms and eyes that burned like fire. He looked at Morrison like he was looking at an insect. General, Morrison said calmly, Earth takes this threat very seriously. Seriously? Kethvor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You send one ship. We Altarians have brought 600. The Centauri brought 800. Even the small species bring dozens. And Earth, the newest member of our coalition, sends one ship with 200 crew? That is correct. It is an insult, Kethvor snarled. While real warriors prepare to die for the galaxy, humans hide behind a token gesture. Morrison felt his crew tense around him, but he kept his voice steady. General, we are here to fight. One ship cannot fight, said Admiral Zixtar sadly. Captain, I appreciate that Earth wants to help, but perhaps you should retreat to a safe distance. We cannot protect you in the coming battle." The transmission ended, leaving the Liberty's bridge in silence. Morrison looked around at his crew. Parker's face was red with anger. Brooks was gripping his console so hard his knuckles were white. Even gentle Danny Walsh looked ready to hit something. "Captain," Parker said through clenched teeth, "permission to show them exactly what this one ship can do." Morrison smiled. "Not yet, Commander, but soon." Over the next 2 days, the Liberty docked at Rally Point 7 for the strategy meetings. Morrison and his senior staff walked through corridors filled with aliens who stared at them with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. In the main briefing room, Morrison sat at a table with the greatest military minds in the galaxy. Admiral Zixtar stood at the front, showing holographic displays of the enemy fleet. "The Voidborn travel in one massive swarm," the Admiral explained. "Our scouts count over 50,000 ships. They move as one mind, one purpose. Our plan is simple. We will meet them in open space with our combined fleet and destroy them through superior numbers." General Kethvor stood up. "My battle fleets will take the center position. We will punch through their formation while the other species provide support. The Centauri heavy cruisers will anchor the flanks," added Fleet Commander Yexel. "Our armor can withstand their weapons long enough for the smaller ships to maneuver." Morrison listened quietly, taking notes on his tablet. Beside him, Ryan. Brooks was doing the same, his eyes moving constantly as he calculated numbers and possibilities. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Zixtar said, "do you have any questions about the battle plan?" All eyes turned to the human. Morrison looked up from his tablet and smiled. "Just one, Admiral. Has this strategy ever worked against the Voidborn before?" The room went silent. Zixtar's blue skin grew pale. "Well, no. Every previous battle has been lost." "I see. And how many ships did those fleets have?" "The last fleet had 2,000 ships. The one before that had 1,500. Morrison nodded. "And they all used the same strategy? Head-on assault, superior numbers, conventional formation fighting?" "Yes, that is the traditional way." "The way that has failed every time." "General," Kethvor slammed his 4 hands on the table. "Are you questioning our tactics, human?" Morrison looked at the angry alien calmly. "I am questioning whether doing the same thing that has failed before will somehow work this time." "Then what do you suggest?" Admiral Zixtar asked. Morrison glanced at his crew. Parker nodded slightly. Brooks tapped his tablet twice. Walsh gave him a small thumbs up. "I suggest we wait and see what the enemy does," Morrison said. "Then we adapt." Kethvor laughed his glass-breaking laugh. "Adapt? In the middle of battle? Impossible. Once the fighting starts, there is no time to think, only time to fight." "General," Morrison said quietly, "humans always have time to think." The meeting continued for several more hours, but Morrison said little else. He listened as the aliens planned their frontal assault, their formation attacks, their traditional battle strategies. Strategies that had failed against the Voidborn again and again. When the meeting ended, Morrison and his crew walked back to the Liberty in silence. Only when they were safely aboard their own ship did anyone speak. "They think we are cowards," Parker said angrily. "They think we are fools," Brooks added. "They think we are weak," Walsh finished. Morrison sat down in his command chair and smiled. "Good. Let them think that. The Voidborn probably think the same thing about all of them. Traditional tactics, predictable strategies, no surprises. So, what do we do, Captain?" Parker asked. Morrison looked out at the thousands of alien ships preparing for battle. Ships filled with brave souls who were about to fight and die using the same failed methods that had never worked before. "We do what humans do best, Commander. We improvise." In the depths of the Liberty, Danny Walsh was already at work. The ship's computers were analyzing every piece of data about the Voidborn, looking for patterns the aliens had missed. The weapons systems were running diagnostic checks on equipment the other species had never seen before. Captain Morrison knew that tomorrow would bring the greatest battle in galactic history. He also knew that every alien in the fleet expected the small human ship to hide in the back, to watch real warriors fight and die. They were going to be very surprised. The alarm bells rang across the galaxy like a death song. Every space station, every colony, every ship floating in the dark received the same message. Admiral Zixtar's face appeared on screens everywhere, his blue skin pale with fear. "This is Admiral Zixtar of the Galactic Defense Coalition," he said, his voice shaking. "The Voidborn swarm has broken through our outer defenses. They have destroyed 12 star systems in the past month. Billions are dead." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "If we do not stop them now, they will consume everything. Every world, every life, every hope we have ever known will be gone forever. I am calling on all member species to send their fleets to Rally Point 7. This is our last chance." The message ended, leaving silence across 1,000 worlds. On Earth, President Maria Santos sat in the war room deep beneath the Capitol. Around her, the best military minds humanity had ever produced stared at screens showing the terrible truth. The Voidborn swarm was unlike anything they had seen before. These were not ships in any sense humans understood. They were living things, dark as space itself, that moved like a single creature with 1,000,000 parts. "How many ships are the other species sending?" asked General Robert Hayes, head of Earth's Space Forces. Colonel Amy Foster checked her tablet. "The Centauri Alliance is sending 800 ships. The Altarians have committed 600. The Rigel Federation promises 400 more. Even the small species are sending dozens." "And what do we have?" President Santos asked, though she already knew the answer. "One ship ready for deep space combat, ma'am. The USS Liberty." Silence filled the room. Earth had only joined the Galactic Defense Coalition 6 months ago. They were still building their space fleet, still learning how to fight wars between the stars. The Liberty was their newest ship, their best ship. But it was still just one vessel against an enemy that had already destroyed entire solar systems. One ship, President Santos said quietly. Against that. On the main screen, they watched recordings of the Voidborn attacks. The alien ships moved like water, flowing around enemy fire, surrounding their targets like a dark tide. When they finished with a planet, nothing remained but empty space. "Ma'am," said Dr. Kevin Nash, the head of Earth's Space Research Division. "The Liberty is not just any ship. We built her differently than the others build their ships. While they focus on big guns and thick armor, we focused on something else." "Which is?" "Intelligence, ma'am. The Liberty can think. Her computer systems can learn and adapt faster than any ship in the galaxy. Her crew is not the largest, but they are the smartest people we have." General Hayes shook his head. "Smart does not stop laser cannons, Doctor. Smart does not win battles when you are outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Dr. Nash smiled. "General, humans have been outnumbered before. We have faced impossible odds before. And we have won before. Not because we were stronger, but because we were smarter." President Santos looked around the room. These were good people, brave people, but they were asking her to send 200 souls into a battle that had already claimed billions of lives. She was asking herself to gamble the lives of Earth's best and brightest on the hope that human cleverness could overcome an enemy that seemed unstoppable. "Who commands the Liberty?" she asked. "Captain Jake Morrison, ma'am," General Hayes replied. 15 years in space, 7 years commanding ships. He has never lost a battle." "He has never fought anything like this." "No, ma'am. No one has." 3 days later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty as she prepared to leave Earth's orbit. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. These were not ordinary sailors. Every person on the ship had been chosen for their mind as much as their skill. Commander Lisa Parker, his first officer, was a former professor of military strategy who could see patterns in chaos that others missed. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh had rebuilt the Liberty's engines 3 times, each time making them better than before. Tactical Officer Ryan Brooks could calculate firing solutions in his head faster than most computers. "Sir," Parker said, looking up from her station, "we are receiving messages from the other coalition species. They want to know why Earth is only sending 1 ship." Morrison almost smiled. "What are they saying?" "The Altarians think we are cowards. The Centauri believe we are too primitive to understand the danger. The Rigel Federation wonders if we are joking." "And what do you think?" "Commander?" Parker looked around the bridge, at the crew working quietly at their stations, at the screens showing the ship's systems running perfectly. "I think they are about to learn something about humans, sir." "And what is that?" "That we do not win fights by being the biggest or the strongest. We win by being the smartest." Morrison nodded. Through the bridge windows, he could see Earth turning slowly below them. Blue and green and beautiful, home to 8 billion people who were counting. On them, not on a fleet of ships, not on an army of soldiers, but on 200 humans and their ability to think their way out of impossible situations. "Set course for Rally Point 7, he ordered. The Liberty turned away from Earth and jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the planet continued to turn, peaceful and quiet. Ahead of them waited a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. In the depths of the ship, Danny Walsh made final adjustments to systems that the other species had never seen before. Computer cores that could learn and grow, weapons that could adapt to any enemy. Engines that could do things the laws of physics said were impossible. The Liberty was not the biggest ship heading to Rally Point 7. She was not the most heavily armed. She did not carry the most soldiers or the thickest armor, but she carried something else, something the galaxy had never seen in battle before. She carried the human spirit, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat, the endless creativity that had taken humanity from caves to the stars in just a few thousand years. As the ship flew through hyperspace toward the greatest battle in galactic history, Captain Morrison sat in his command chair and smiled. The other species thought humans were sending 1 ship because that was all they had. They were wrong. Humans were sending 1 ship because that was all they needed. Jake Morrison leaned back in his chair and gave High Counselor Zarthak a small, almost sad smile. The silence in the chamber stretched for several heartbeats. Amy, Vera, and Pete watched their captain, still shaking from their psychic ordeal. The Zephyrians waited, their glowing eyes fixed on the human who had somehow resisted their most powerful weapon. When Jake finally spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. It carried to every corner of the chamber. "Because, Counselor, what you showed me isn't scary. It's Tuesday." The words seemed to hang in the air. Zarthak's claws scraped against the crystal table as she tried to process what she had just heard. The other Zephyrians looked at each other with confusion. Even Amy, Vera, and Pete stared at their captain with surprise. Jake continued, his voice still calm but gaining strength. "You showed me death, pain, loss, and destruction. You think these are humanity's greatest fears, but you've misunderstood us completely. We don't fear these things because we live with them every day." He stood up slowly, not in a threatening way, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen too much. His movements were careful and respectful, but there was something in his posture that made the Zephyrians pay attention. "On my world, we have a saying," Jake said, walking slowly around his chair. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in spite of fear. Every human who leaves our planet knows they might never return home. Every parent who kisses their child goodbye knows it might be the last time. Every soldier, every explorer, every diplomat like myself makes peace with death long before we ever meet it." Zarthak leaned back in her seat, her 4 arms moving restlessly. This was not the response she had expected. She had dealt with brave warriors before, beings who fought through fear to achieve their goals. But this human was describing something different entirely. Jake walked to the chamber's viewing port and looked out at the stars beyond. The crystal walls reflected his image, making it appear as if multiple versions of him were speaking at once. "When I was 25 years old," Jake said, "I was a junior officer on a research vessel called the Star Runner. We were exploring a system on the edge of human space when we detected a distress signal from a colony ship. 300 families, including children, were trapped on a planet with a failing life support system." He turned slightly, still looking out at the stars but addressing the Zephyrians. The planet was in the middle of a radiation storm. Our ship's computer calculated that anyone who went down to help had a 70% chance of dying from radiation poisoning. The safe choice was to wait for a properly equipped rescue ship that wouldn't arrive for 6 days. Amy, Vera, and Pete were listening intently. They had never heard this story before. Zarthak found herself drawn in despite her confusion. "But those families didn't have 6 days," Jake continued. "They had maybe 18 hours before their air ran out. So my captain, a woman named Helen Cross, called for volunteers. She told us exactly what the odds were. She told us that going down there would probably kill us. And then she asked who was willing to do it anyway." Jake finally turned away from the viewing port to face the Zephyrians directly. "Every single member of the crew volunteered, all 48 of us. We drew lots to see who would go because we couldn't risk the entire ship. I was one of the 12 chosen." Vorketh, the younger Zephyrian council member, spoke up. "What happened?" "We saved all 300 colonists," Jake said simply. "We got them off the planet and to safety. And yes, 11 of the 12 rescuers died from radiation poisoning over the next few weeks. I was the only survivor, and even I spent 3 months in the hospital." The chamber was completely silent now. Even the crystal formations seemed to have stopped their pulsing. "That's when I learned something important about fear," Jake said. "It's not something to be conquered or ignored. It's information. Fear tells you that something is dangerous, that you might get hurt, that you might lose something precious. But fear doesn't tell you what to do about it. That choice is always yours." He sat back down at the table and looked directly at Zarthak. "You want to know what really terrifies a human? It's not death or pain. It's not even the loss of everything we love, though that comes close. What truly terrifies us is the possibility that our brief existence might be meaningless, that we might fail to protect those who depend on us, that we might not leave the universe a little better than we found it." Zarthak's voice was quieter now, less commanding. "You speak of choosing to act despite fear. But the visions I showed, you included the death of your own species. How can you remain calm when faced with extinction?" Jake smiled, and this time there was no sadness in it. "Because extinction is not a fear, counselor. It's a fact. Every species dies eventually. Every star burns out. Every planet becomes cold and empty. Everything ends. The question is not whether we'll survive forever, because we won't. The question is what we do with the time we have." He gestured to his teammates. "Amy here has dedicated her life to understanding other cultures so that different species can communicate better. Vera has spent decades preventing wars and building peaceful relationships between peoples who used to be enemies. Pete has trained his entire adult life to protect others, even when it means putting himself in danger." Jake's voice grew stronger as he continued. "Every human who chooses to leave Earth and go out into the galaxy does so knowing that space is vast and dangerous and ultimately lethal. We do it anyway because the alternative is to hide on our homeworld, safe but useless, until the sun burns out or an asteroid hits us or our own foolishness destroys us." He stood up again and walked closer to Zarthak's side of the table. The Zephyrians tensed, but Jake's movements remained calm and non-threatening. "So no, counselor, your illusions don't frighten me. They remind me why I'm here, and why this negotiation matters more than my personal safety. They remind me that life is precious because it's temporary, and that means every moment we waste on fear or hatred or misunderstanding is a moment we could have spent building something beautiful. Jake returned to his seat and picked up his diplomatic notes. Now, shall we discuss the trade agreements? I believe we have much to offer each other. Zarthak stared at him for a long moment. Her 4 arms were still, her claws retracted, her glowing eyes focused entirely on this strange human who had just turned her worldview upside down. For the first time in her long life, the High Counselor of the Zephyrians felt something she had never experienced before. It was not fear exactly, but something deeper and more profound. It was the recognition that she was in the presence of something she had thought extinct in the universe, wisdom born from the acceptance of mortality. When she spoke again, her voice carried a respect that had not been there before. Captain Morrison, I believe we have much more to discuss than trade agreements. President Maria Santos stared at the emergency message on her screen. The words seemed impossible to believe, but Jake Morrison had never lied to her before. A council fleet was coming to destroy Earth in less than 3 days. She pressed the red button on her desk that would alert every world leader at once. Within minutes, her office filled with holographic images of presidents, prime ministers, and generals from every nation on Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, Maria said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest, we have 72 hours to evacuate 8 billion people from Earth. Operation Exodus begins now. The room exploded with voices. Some people shouted that it was impossible. Others demanded to know why the aliens wanted to kill them. But General Robert Chen from the Global Defense Force was already pulling up fleet numbers on his tablet. We have 8,000 space-capable vessels of various sizes, he reported. Military ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, mining ships, and construction platforms. If we pack people in like sardines, we might be able to fit everyone. Pack them where? Demanded Chancellor Hassan from the African Union. Even if we get everyone off Earth, where do we go? The Council controls every habitable planet in the galaxy. Dr. Kevin Hayes stepped forward from the back of the room. He was Earth's leading expert on quantum physics and space-time theory. His wild gray hair made him look crazy, but his mind was sharper than anyone else on the planet. We don't go to another planet, Kevin said quietly. We go somewhere the Council can't follow. He activated a holographic display that showed swirling equations and diagrams that hurt to look at directly. For 15 years, I've been working on something we call the reality bridge. It's based on research the Council specifically forbade us from pursuing. What does it do? Maria asked. It tears a hole through space-time itself, Kevin explained. Not just to another location, but to another layer of reality. A place between dimensions where normal physics don't apply. The room went silent. Even for humans, who were known for crazy ideas, this sounded insane. Kevin, said Dr. Sarah Williams from the European Space Agency, are you talking about creating our own universe? Not creating, Kevin corrected. Finding. The space between realities already exists. We just need to build a bridge to get there. General Chen looked skeptical. How long would it take to build this bridge? It's already built, Kevin said with a small smile. We've been working on it in secret for years. The Council thought they were forbidding dangerous weapons research. They didn't realize we were building an escape route. Outside, the evacuation had already begun. Every news channel on Earth was broadcasting the same message. Pack only what you can carry and report to your nearest spaceport immediately. No one was explaining why, but humans had learned to trust their governments when it came to alien threats. Commander. Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the military vessel Earth's Pride, watching thousands of ships launch from the planet's surface. Cargo ships designed to carry grain were now packed with families. Luxury cruise ships that once toured the solar system were loading refugees as fast as their docking bays would allow. Status report, Alex called to his navigation officer. 7 million people evacuated so far, Lieutenant Brown reported. But we're having problems with the outer colonies. Mars Colony says they can't abandon their terraforming equipment. The asteroid miners are refusing to leave their claims. Alex gritted his teeth. Tell them the Council fleet will kill everyone they find. Equipment and mining claims won't matter if they're dead. On the Lunar Research Station, Dr. Lisa Grant was working with Kevin Hayes to prepare the reality bridge for activation. The device looked like a massive ring made of silver metal and glowing crystals. It hummed with energy that made her skin tingle. The quantum calculations are complete, Lisa said, checking her instruments. But Kevin, what happens if this doesn't work? What if we end up scattered across different dimensions or trapped in empty space? Kevin's hands never stopped moving. Over his controls. Then we die free instead of dying as slaves. But Lisa, I think this will work. The math is beautiful. When we activate the bridge, it won't just move our ships to another dimension. It will change us. Make us capable of existing in a place where thought itself can reshape reality. The evacuation was moving faster than anyone had expected. Humans were good at working together when survival was at stake. Factory workers were loading onto mining vessels. Scientists were sharing space with farmers. Rich and poor sat side by side in cargo holds, united by the knowledge that they were all refugees now. On the second day, long-range sensors detected the Council fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 80 massive warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. They're not even trying to hide it, Alex reported to President Santos. They're broadcasting on all frequencies that they're here to establish a quarantine zone. How long until they reach Earth? Maria asked. 6 hours if they maintain current speed. Maria looked around at her advisors. Most of the government had already evacuated, but she had stayed behind to coordinate the final evacuation flights. How many people are still on Earth? About 50,000, General Chen replied. Mostly volunteers who stayed to help with the evacuation and essential personnel keeping the power grids running. And the reality bridge? Dr. Kevin Hayes appeared on screen from the lunar station. His face was pale but determined. Ready to activate on your command, Madam President. But once we turn this on, there's no going back. We'll be cutting all ties to this dimension. Through the windows of her office, Maria could see the last evacuation ships lifting off from the capital city. Her home for 60 years was about to become an empty tomb. Dr. Hayes, she said formally, activate the reality bridge. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Space itself seemed to bend around the massive ring structure orbiting between Earth and the Moon. Stars flickered and changed color. The familiar patterns of constellations twisted into impossible shapes. Commander Alex Turner felt his ship begin to vibrate in ways that defied physics. All ships, prepare for dimensional transition, he broadcast to the evacuation fleet. Remember, we're not just changing location. We're changing what we are. The Council fleet was still 3 hours away when reality cracked open like an egg. 10,000 human ships, carrying the entire population of Earth, disappeared into a gap in space-time that sealed itself behind them. When the Council ships finally reached Earth, they found an empty world orbiting a star that no longer quite looked the same. The planet was intact, but lifeless. Every human had vanished without a trace. Commander Zraktor of the Council fleet stared at his instruments in confusion. Where did they go? He demanded of his science officer. Unknown, sir, came the reply. Our sensors show evidence of massive space-time distortion, but the energy signatures don't match any known technology. What the Council didn't realize was that humans hadn't just escaped. They had damaged something fundamental in the process. The artificial systems that kept reality stable throughout the galaxy were beginning to fail, and in their new home between dimensions, Humanity was about to discover powers that would make them more dangerous to the Council than ever before. The evacuation was complete. 8 billion humans had vanished into the space between realities. But their escape had consequences that would shake the galaxy to its core.